this is Bill Barber from BlenderBrit, and today we're going to be making a spinning top tutorial. It's a 10-second animation, though there's quite a lot involved in making it, and the tutorial has run on quite a bit longer than I initially planned, so apologies for that. It's aimed primarily at the intermediate user. If you just started Blender, I wouldn't recommend it just yet. Get to grip with the basics first, but anyone with sort of an intermediate knowledge or up will be able to follow along just fine. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is delete the default cube and also the default lamp, and then we're going to press Shift A and get ourselves a cylinder. We'll bring up the little properties panel, change it to 16 vertices, and then we're going to press Tab and enter edit mode. At this stage I'm going to grab the whole thing with G and then press Z to move it up the Z axis, hold down Control, which allows us to snap rather than move freely, and that way we get it right up to the grid floor there. Okay, now we are going to be working in real world dimensions once we get the rest of the scene built, but at this stage, because it's such a small object, we're going to keep things at this sort of scale, which is fine. We'll take this up the Z-axis now to 3.2 Blender units, and then we need to increase the circumference to about 2.7. Easiest way to do that is if you press S to scale, then Shift and Z, that will lock out the Z-axis so you're only scaling along the X and Y, and we'll drag it up to be about 2.7, which is there. Fantastic. Okay, next step is to bring in a loop cut. That's Control R. And this is going to be the widest part, which is about there, give or take. We're also going to need another loop cut here and here, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so we need to bring in these loops to start making the shape. That's going to be the top, nice and thin. That's going to be a bit slimmer and down a bit. Probably about there. This one is gonna go about there. As you can see, when I'm editing, I am locking to the axes a lot. It makes it a lot easier than trying to line things up. So I press G and Z and I'm stuck to the Z axis. Okay, put that in about there, I guess. Take that into there, and then this will form our base. That doesn't look quite right, but it's not too far off. Maybe grab all that down a bit and bring in that a little more. Yeah, that should work well. Okay, at this stage we're going to add a subsurface modifier, subdivision surface, whatever. Turn that up to a value of 3 or so, and now we can really start seeing what our spinning tops looking like. We'll tab back into edit mode and start adding in some more loops to bring out the shape. We want to create a sort of very noticeable ridge here, so the easiest way to do that is add in these 2 loop cuts. There we go. And then scale those along the circumference, so Shift Z again to lock out the Z axis and bring those out. Not bad. Okay, I want to sharpen these up a little bit. Now we can try doing that using a crease, so let's see if that works. Yeah. The benefit of using a crease over adding in more loop cuts is simply it keeps geometry down. It can make the UVs a bit easier to map textures to. It won't help here, but in general it can. But the big thing is it keeps geometry down, which is always good. There we go. Yeah, it's actually not too bad. Okay, we need to get rid of the faces at the top and the bottom, because they're n-gons rather than quads, and therefore evil. Basically, any time you're using a subsurf modifier, you cannot use anything other than quads, because it will look bad, and we don't want bad, we want good. Okay, just going to grab that up a little bit and press E to extrude, and then scale, and I'm just going to press S and then 0 to scale it to completely 0, That's still since these don't join, they look like triangles, but there's essentially two vertices there for each of these. So they're still quads, which is why the subsurf modifier handles it perfectly. And we'll do the same up the top. It's looking a little thin. I have to do some adjustment there in a moment. That's not horrible. Maybe just bring that up a bit and create another loop there. Yeah, it builds in the shape nicely. Okay, so we have our basic shape. I'm going to turn the screen key size down because that's ridiculously big. There we go, that's better. Okay, next step then, we're going to take a loop from the back here by pressing Alt, Shift and right mouse. In fact, I think you just need Alt, don't you? Yeah, it's Alt and right mouse, and then Shift as well if you want to select more. So Alt right mouse, select a edge loop there, and then Control E to mark the seam, and then select all of it and press U and unwrap. Now that we've unwrapped it, we need to see what that looks like, so we're going to open up a new tab here and go to UV image editor. UV image editor, there we go, I can say it properly. Okay, now the issue here obviously is that's unwrapped horribly. Thankfully for us though, we're only adding some scratches. They're going to be very non-uniform anyway, so it don't matter. The only thing I am going to neaten up, because I noticed it caused issues when I was doing this first time around, is these three edge loops that make up the edge here. So if you hit scale Y0, that flattens it out nicely, and we'll do that again here and again here. Fantastic. Drag that up there, scale it out a little bit to try and slightly neaten this up so it vaguely resembles the shape of our object. That should do. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that. Now I'm just noticed that looks awful. We need to fix that. Need to fix that immediately. There we go. Yeah, that'll do. Okay. I should probably re-UV unwrap, but I'm not going to because you're not going to see that anyway, so who cares. Okay, now this panel you wouldn't have seen before because I made it myself. I strongly recommend you make one like it, or something that suits your needs. But basically here I have a nice node layout. I have two 3D viewports. One I normally leave on the camera angle, typically in rendered mode when I'm working on materials, and then this second one allows me to still navigate the scene without breaking away from the camera. However, you can also use this top one for any other panels that you need to get to. In this case, I'm going to change it to the image editor, so we've got that too, and just focus in on that for now. Perfect. Okay, now we need to add in some lighting. I'm just going to use some quick area lamps. We'll be deleting these later. These are literally just so we can start working on materials. They will not be part of the scene's lighting. Change that to about 2. And get some lighting on our scene. Now, I'm not paying too much attention to the values I'm putting in. It's literally just to give us some light, so it don't matter too much at all. I am going to change the colours so we can see what reflections coming from what direction. What did I change that to? I have that yellow actually. That blue, and then another one about there. Now you don't have to go to this much detail. This is probably me just doing it out of force of habit. But when you've got the 3 colours in kind of the typical 3-point lighting system there, you're going to be able to tell exactly where the light's coming from. It's going to be getting the highlights. It just makes working with materials easier. So a layout similar to that I would definitely recommend. Okay, going back to that nodes panel that I like. we can start working on our material. Switch this to rendered mode. Let's go back to 3D, I guess. Right, so create a new material, and we'll call it spinning top. I keep wanting to call it a totem for obvious movie related reasons, but that's not its name, is it? It's a spinning top. So that's what we'll call it, spinning top. Okay. We'll start with a glossy shader with a nice sharp reflection, probably about 0.02 I would imagine, maybe even smaller, 0.01. Yeah, I like that, that works well. We do need to bring up the background lighting just a bit to make sure we get the colour right. We want to go for kind of a mid-level colour. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, so now we've got the really sharp reflections in, we're going to go for some softer ones by creating another glossy shader. This one will set to about 0.3, which if I connect that to the outlet, as you can see, completely different effect. But we're only going to be using just a little bit of this one. So I'll bring in a mix shader, click that in there. We want the smoother reflection going in the bottom and the other one going in the top, and then we'll drag this down to about 0.3, give or take, maybe less, 0.2. Yeah, let's do that. We'll go with 0.2 on the smoother reflection glossy, and 0.2 on the mix shader. Perfect. Okay, at this point we're going to bring in the textures. Now I'll say now that all of the textures used here I will be linking at the bottom of the video. Let me just find where I'm at. Boom. So this is some of the textures we're going to need for now. But the first one is this Metal Bear 00991L, which I believe is from textures.com, but I'll confirm after I've recorded this. So we'll bring that in. Now I'm going to keep a temporary diffuse shader here, mainly for working on adjusting the texture and being able to see what we're doing with it. So if I connect that to there, bam, we get to see our texture on the model. As you can see, the UV unwrapping's done quite a good job. If I was being pernickety, I'd probably want to neaten up this ridge a little bit, but it's not important, it's fine for now. So we're going to add in a colour ramp. Now the first thing we're going to do is essentially make our specularity map. Bam. So for specularity, all the white areas will be 100% glossy, and all of the black areas will be 0%, which we don't want any of. So for a start, we're going to change the black area to be kind of a mid-level grey, and keep the white area as white. Perfect. Let's look at that. I still reckon that grey needs to come up a little bit, because we want some variation, but not too harsh, because it is at the end of the day all the same material. It's just got some scratches on it. Yeah, I think that'll work well. So that's going to be our specular map, and now we're going to make a bump out of the same technique. So colour ramp again, and this time a bump. Now what we're aiming for here is some really high contrast black lines following where the scratches are. So let's bring the black up. I think I like that actually. That's more like it. So if you hit this little icon here, it will flip the nodes, basically doing an invert from the original texture. So now when I move the black down, we're getting these much more defined black lines, which will be nice for our height map, bump map, whatever you want to call it. Okay, that should work well. I might lower the white a little bit, because white is mid-grey, like 0.5 mid-grey is flat. If you then go to white, that's bump in an upwards direction from the normal, and black is in a downwards direction. And we don't really want to go up because the scratches are just going to be cutting in, so we'll set that to about a mid-grey. Something like that should work pretty well. So we'll disconnect that diffuse shader, we don't need it now. I'll leave it there though in case we need to make some adjustments. And start building this up. Now we're going to use the easiest way here is literally just to feed the glossy map, specular map, whatever, directly into the colour of the glossies. As you can see, that's giving us a nice little bit of variation without looking like the material's non-uniform. It's all the same material, and it looks like that, which is good. I might just bring up that grey value again just a little bit more. Actually no, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to bring the white down just a little bit. If I can click on it. Hello. Thank you. Bring that down just a little bit. Ooh, me like. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So we've got our basic material now pretty much sorted. We just need to add in this bump map and we'll be about done with the totem. So add in a bump map. Feed the colour from this chat into the height value, and then the normal into both the normal inputs on the glossies, and that adds in some bump, way too much bump. So we'll turn that down to about a 0.1, and then what you want to do is pan around until you get a nice bit you can focus on where the light's hitting the object. Yeah, that's gonna be nice, that should work. And let's perfect this. So let's up the distance to about a 0.4. Yeah, got it right first time. Actually, it's quite nice. Yeah, I think that'll work. Now, if you were doing a still, I would spend a lot longer making the material on this look perfect. Maybe add in some patterns, go around the side, some sort of markings, certainly some more variation, maybe a grunge texture, something along those lines. But because it's an animation, I did experiment with it the first time around and you could not tell the difference, so why waste your time? This little node group will work fine for the animation that we're doing, so that's all we're going to do. And that's our totem done. The next step is going to be to build the room, so we'll get started on that now. Right, so next up is the room. Before we start though, please take a look at the notes underneath this video if you haven't already, and download the starter pack from the Architecture Academy from BlenderBrit. We're going to be using that to populate our scene, the background items and whatnot. So if you want to follow along exactly, you will need that pack. What I would recommend doing, however, is spend some more time on it, make your own models. It's the best way to learn is through experimenting. But if you're wanting to just pull off something nice and quick, then definitely grab the pack, and that's what we're going to be doing here in the tutorial. So I'm going to move the totem, get rid of that, put it wherever for now, and we're going to delete these 3 lamps because we don't need them anymore. I'm going to move the camera over to layer 10 because that's where I always keep my camera. Now at this point we are going to start working to real world measurements. So we'll change this to metric because I'm from the UK and that's kind of what we use. Yeah, the UK is weird. We're kind of caught in the middle of Europe and the US. Half our stuff's miles and whatever, and other measurements are in millimeters, meters. I don't know, it's a mess. A lot like the country, but hey. So we'll add in a cube, which is going to form the outline of our room, and move that up to be on the grid floor, and then we'll work from the dimensions here to get the size of our room. So it's going to be a 6 by 6 meter room, so that's what we're going to put in the X and Y. Now for room height, I believe I looked it up and the average room height apparently is 2.4 meters, though I don't think that looks particularly right whenever I do it, so I'm going to change mine to 2.7-ish. It just looks more room shaped to me. Maybe I'm used to a higher ceiling here, I don't know, but that will do nicely for this. Now, another thing you're going to need to grab, I would imagine, because it's not included within Blender, is the add-on Archimesh. I've got it already installed here. There'll be a link at the bottom of the video along with everything else, so get that add-on installed because we'll be using it for the windows, which is what I'm going to add in now. Once you've got Archimesh installed, you get an extra little bit in your add menu, and we can add in a window like so. It's a bit of a small window, so let's have a look at the sizes. So 1.2 meter width. No, we want to go more like 1.6, I think. Height is 1 meter. We're going to go 1.5. Yeah. Nicely lit room, always good. Now the camera is going to be about here, looking in that direction. So the only part of this scene that we need to spend any attention to at all is going to be like, it's going to be literally that area here. The rest of it will not be in shot, which is brilliant because it allows you to give the impression of a really detailed room without doing any of the work to create one. So just get rid of that stupid grease pencil. There we go. Move this up here. There we go. You want the I don't know what they're called, the little bit at the bottom of a window ledge. I don't know, whatever. You want that facing inwards. In this case, anyway. I'll put the window about there. Be a bit along. Yeah, that should be fine. And then, that's not right, is it? Select all of those items. In case I haven't mentioned it, I use box select a lot. You just press B and then it's left and drag to select, or middle click and drag to deselect. Very useful. So I'm going to duplicate that window, rotate it -90, and then put that in about here. My mouse just went crazy. At least that's what I'm going to blame it on. Have we got the heights about right? We do not. The good thing about these windows when you add them is they can be controlled by the empty, so you don't have to worry about the individual objects. They also come pre-installed with some fairly decent materials. We will be adjusting them slightly, but not a huge amount. Excellent, so now we've got our windows. The next stage is to start shaping the room around them, because obviously at the moment you wouldn't be able to see much. So we'll select our cube, and then we're going to select the top and bottom faces, and we're going to get rid of them. In fact, I'm going to separate them separately. So we've got a ceiling as a separate object, and then our floor as a separate object, which for now I will press H to hide, so we've just seen what we're doing with the room. Scale this down again so we can see what we're doing. Perfect. Okay, so in edit mode, we're going to create some edge loops and line it up with our window. Now a little trick here, which you may or may not know, is to use the snapping tool. By default it's set to increment. We've used it a few times already to move things up to the grid floor, for example. But if you change it to vertex or edge, I'm going to use vertex, it allows you to snap to a vertex even if it's in a different object, which is really, really useful, as I'll demonstrate now. So we'll add in a loop here, Control R as usual, go to the side view, and then grab that and move it along the y-axis, and then if you hold Control and move it over a vertice, whatever, you can get things lined up very, very nicely. It took me a long time to realise that Blender had this type of snapping tool. I think I saw it on a tutorial on, it was CG Cookie, it was Jonathan Williamson, I think. Brilliant. Second I discovered it, I've not stopped using it since. I imagine you'll be much the same if it's new to you. Okay, so we have one of our windows cut out, like so. Ooh, hello. There we go. And now we need to do this one as well. So it's same as before, 2 loop cuts. Thankfully the top and bottom ones are already done from the previous window, so it's just these 2 we need to worry about. One about there, and one about there. And then get rid of that face. Bam, not too shabby. Okay, I'm going to move these just out the way a moment. I'm going to move it an exact amount so I know what I've done. 5 up, perfect. Because what we want to do is extrude these out a little bit. So if you just select the edge tool or the that's either's fine, and is it just alt click? Does that work? Yeah, just alt click on the edge and it will highlight that loop around the window. And we want to extrude that by about, I don't know, 30 centimeters. Ooh, that's not right. Grab X 30 cm. I'll just do it as 0.3. There you go. It's not behaving. Yeah, that should be about right. So we'll do the same here. Extrude Y 0.3. Boom. That's just the little cutouts for the window, which definitely helps. So I'm going to move these back now. So grab Z -5, and they're back where they were. And now we just need to pull these out just a little bit. Move this up a little bit. Oh, move this up at the same time. I'm sorry as I'm mumbling again. I've got a nasty habit of talking too quietly. I do apologise. Whenever I'm aware of it, I will correct it. And then we'll move this chap out as well to be about the same. And you see that extrusion just gives us that slight impression of there being an actual wall there, as opposed to just a magic window. Now, even though Cycles doesn't get too affected by it compared to the internal render, all our normals here are facing in the wrong direction. So I'm going to press A to select all of the vertices, and then flip direction, which is under shading and UVs on the side panel here. So now the normal direction is pointing inwards, which is what we want. Okay, a few things left to do. We need to make some extra gaps here. We don't need to put windows in because it's out of view of the camera, but we do want more light coming in than is currently. So I'll do that. In fact, I'm gonna there we go. Move that way a little bit, and a slightly bigger one here, so we get lots of light coming in from the back, because that's what a lot of the light will be reflected off the totem. Get some nice reflections, and in compositing we'll add in some flares at that point as well, but we need that hole there to create that. So with the room done, or the walls done, we're going to hit Alt and H to bring back the ceiling and floor, and we'll work on that next. In fact, I tell you what, I'm just going to get the floor plane because it's easier to see that way. So I'm going to go Shift H, which will hide everything but what you have selected. So we're just looking at our floor. I'm also going to, you know what? I'm going to rename some stuff because this is going to get very messy very quickly. I have a terrible habit of doing this, as I'm sure does. Oh my God, what's happened there? There we go. I must have clicked something without realising. Yeah, I have a terrible habit of not following a decent naming scheme, and as scenes get more complicated, it becomes an absolute nightmare. So take my advice, give yourself a kick, and start giving things names, and then thank me later. So this is the walls. That cylinder is the spinning top. Went to say totem again there. That is the floor, obviously, and that is the ceiling. Bam. The window ones come named, so that's fine. So good, yeah. So back to where we were. Floor, Shift H, get rid of everything else, and we have our floor. We'll create a material for it, which we'll imaginatively call floor, and then I'm going to tab into edit mode, select everything, and hit U to unwrap. Now you see here it says object has a non-uniform scale. That is a very good point. Thank you for reminding me, Blender. Oh, H to bring everything back again. highlight everything and then press Shift A, apply scale. This happened because you remember when we first started the room, I used the dimensions here to lay out the size of the object. That messes with the scale of the object, which is bad. We don't want that. Whenever a scale is off, it causes problems with UVs, with modifier amounts, with bump maps amount, everything. So make sure you're always on a proper one-to-one scale all the time, really. Perfect. So attempt number 3 to just concentrate on the floor, and then we'll UV unwrap again. We don't get the error message. Perfect. Jump back to my nodes view, and I'm not going to add in the HDR yet. I'm going to add in a, if I can find it, icosphere. I love using these for testing floor lighting, and you'll see why in a moment. So I'm just going to move that to about there. Give that a really quick temporary emission material of about, I don't know, 50. Let's have a look. Yeah, perfect. So as we work on the floor, as you can imagine, we're going to be able to see exactly what the light's doing as it's hitting it because of this little ball here. So with our floor material selected, we're going to bring in some textures. Now these textures are from the Architecture Academy free pack thing that I mentioned earlier. It's really good. It's got some really nice textures in there. If you don't want to download that though, there are plenty of alternatives available on textures.com and various other places. There we go. Starter pack textures. Starter pack, that's the word I was looking for. Come on, Bill, get it together. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is grab the diffuse texture for the floor. Interior wood. Bam. Thank you very much. And then we'll apply it, and we have some wood. Awesome. I do like having wood. Okay. And then I'm going to change this to a UV image editor panel thing, so we can play with the scaling here. Now you could adjust this via a vector mapping node in the nodes, but this is so much easier, so why not? I think that scaling's about right. What I typically do, I'm not going to do it now because it's a bit time consuming, but if I'm trying to make sure that a floor is scaled right to a room, look up the size of it online, the size of the individual strips, calculate how many strips there's going to be based on the size of your room, and count it out. It sounds silly, but it's flawless. It works every time. But in this instance, we're just going to guess. Let's say about there. Perfect. So that's our diffuse shader in. We now need to bring in our specular one when I can find it. Spec, perfect. So this is going to power our glossy setup, which we're going to add in now. Glossy node, mix shader. Now we'll pour the specularity map into the mix shader. And that is not doing much, is it? Oh no, I tell you what, it is. It's just because that's too bright. Okay, let's turn that down a bit and we'll be able to see what we're doing. In fact, this is why I love having the two viewports, because I can keep the rendered scene going and use this one to adjust. So we'll just raise that a little bit and maybe turn down the strength to 30. So we want to ignore this yellow light is the diffuse lighting. We want to ignore that and concentrate on the white lighting, which is the specular. And then when I unconnect that or disconnect that, you see that's just 100% specular all over the glossy. Say glossy, Bill, damn it. 100% glossy all over the object, and then when you add in the map there, it's just you're just getting it in the areas where you want it, which is brilliant. But we also need to add in a little setup for Fresnel, because pretty much every material needs a Fresnel value, the exception being metals, which is why we did not do one on our spinning top. So, add in Fresnel. Now I learned this new technique very recently actually, from the, what tutorial was it? It was the new Earth tutorial from BlenderBrit, on how to mix in a Fresnel value with an image texture, and this is how you do it. Very nice. I've just added in 2 of those. Get it together, man. Okay, we'll get another mix shader. We'll feed the glossy into the bottom value and the diffuse up here into there, and then the Fresnel into there, and then that gives us, just so you can see what it's doing, I'm going to take that out of the equation for now. Oh, I did have it the right way, good. So that's basically what Fresnel does. It changes the amount of glossy that's applied based on the angle that you're looking at the surface. So we're looking flat on at the wood floor at the moment, not glossy at all. And then as we increase that angle, more and more glossiness is applied, which is exactly what happens in the real world. Obviously, on its own, it's really not gonna do much. But when combined with a good specularity map, you can get some really nice results. I've turned this up to about a 1.8 for the Fresnel, and I've lowered the glossy roughness to 0.05, which I think will work quite nicely. Let's have a look when we reconnect to the rest of the nodes. Oh no, it didn't do it right, that's why. That wants to live there. There we go. Okay, I think that's looking quite good. It's kind of hard to judge from this lighting, so let's... Yeah, that would look nice. Good, okay. So now we need to add in the next texture. In fact, we're going to add in 2, because I think there's a displacement map and a normal map. Now, the way Blender handles that has changed recently. The displacement node in the material output doesn't seem to do anything these days, unless I'm mistaken. If I am, please let me know, but I don't think that it does. So we're going to take the normal value here, normal texture I should say, and then the height one, displacement one, sorry, and put that there. Now the setup to get this to all work well together is simpler than I first thought it would be. You grab a normal map first of all, add your colour node to it, leave the strength at 1, because the normal map should be done perfectly. But we're not going to connect those to our shaders yet. I'm then going to add in a bump map, connect the normal from the normal map into the normal of the bump map, and then the displacement texture into the height, which we can then adjust via the strength, but first we'll connect it to the rest of our node group. Oh, sorry, not the glossy. Boom. Oh no, we do want the glossy, but it's because the strength's high. Ignore me. Okay, so if we turn the strength down to, why are you not working? Yeah, I've done something wrong here, haven't I? Okay, no, that's fine. Right, so yeah, don't worry about the Fresnel and the diffuse, it just needs to go into the... Sorry, ignore the Fresnel and the glossy, it just needs to go into the diffuse. Okay, our floor's looking quite good. Honestly, I'd spend more time on it if we were doing a interior house scene, but for what we're doing here, that is going to be perfect. In fact, honestly, I've probably spent too much time on it, so I apologise if this is now going to run a little long. Got a bit carried away. So, we've got our floor, bring everything else back, and get rid of that stupid sphere. And now it's time to start putting the scene together. So, we'll add in a camera. No, we won't, because I've already got one. Okay, so we want to position the camera about there. It's not too shabby. Now we're going to take the focal length to about 45. Now the sort of shot we're going for is pretty close in, rather than someone at a distance zooming in on the spinning top. It's going to be someone standing right by the table, zooming in just a little bit, just to get in that little bit closer, which is why we're going with 45. If you wanted to do a shot where you're sort of on the other side of the room zooming in with a camera, you'd go for something like 80, perhaps even higher, but 45 is perfect for this. I'm going to rotate that around a little bit, maybe. Yeah, we'll need the other items in to properly see, but that should be about right. In fact, it's definitely going to be lower because I definitely do want some of the floor in there. Perfect. Okay. If you haven't already, it would be a very good time to save. So that's what I'm going to do now. Call this tutorial recording 1 or something or other. Boom. Okay. So let's start bringing in objects from the pack to fill this seed out. So you've got two options. You've got append and a link. If you don't know the difference, append will bring in the object, and it will be treated like any other object that's in your scene. You're just copying and pasting it into your scene essentially. Whereas link just references the object from the original file, meaning it's not really in your blend file. You can't make any changes to it. However, if the original file has any changes made to it, they will be updated in the file you're working on, the one it's being linked into, which is really good if you're working on a very complex scene. You can break your blend files down into all the individual items and then just have one main scene to bring it all together. I use that all the time. Recommend you look into it if you don't already. So for this, we're going to use link, unless we have any issues with it, which wouldn't surprise me because it seems like one of those sorts of days. Okay, we're going to bring in this coffee table first of all, which is what our delightful spinning top is going to sit on. There we go, Japanese coffee table. Where's it gone? There it is, awesome. So we want to position this just in front of our camera, about there. Perfect. Move that up a bit. Maybe bring it in a bit more. Actually bring this closer. Another tip, I'm full of them today. If you're in camera mode, it's sometimes difficult to move objects around. Let's say I want to move this across the floor, you'd probably be tempted to go into top view and then tab into, or press Z so you can go into wireframe mode and then move it that way. But you don't need to. Grab the object with G, press Shift Z to lock out the Z axis, and then it will fly around your room like that, staying on the floor, which is perfect. So we'll bring the table in a bit closer, lower this camera a bit more, bring it in even closer. Ooh, not a little too close. Yeah, is that still going to leave enough room for the chair and stuff? Yeah, cool. Okay, so got our table in place. And if you remember the video at the start of this tutorial, it's really starting to come together now. You can see what's going on. So at this point we'll grab our totem in a minute, but first I've noticed this object is on 2 layers. I actually don't want it on either of those. All of these additional items that we're bringing in, I'm going to put on layer 2, and then the totem itself I'm going to move to layer 3. Now when we were doing this, I don't think I said it at the time, but we were working to a specific measurement, just enlarged. So if you now scale this by 0.1, that should mean, if I apply the scale, we might have to go back in and look at the bump map actually. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, when you reapply a scale, you have to check any settings like bump mapping or anything else that's dependent on scale, just to make sure nothing's changed. It shouldn't be too much of an issue, I wouldn't have thought. That's it, it looks relatively okay, so that's fine. And that's, as I said, we moved that to layer 3. Now this should be 32 centimeters high. That is a big totem. We want it 3.2, So I should have scaled it by 0.01, not 0.1. So we'll do that again. Grab it, scale 0.1. That's looking a bit more spinning toppy size. Let's check the bump mapping again. It'll do. Okay. Okay, so we'll turn all the layers on. In fact, we don't need layer 1. Just need 2 and 3, which is our spinning top, which now is a nice scale for the rest of the scene. And grab that down and get it as close to where we want it. And okay, perfect. Now we can continue to adjust our camera, because obviously the highlight of this is the spinning top. It is not the room, so that's the thing that needs to be in shot the most. Might even rotate the camera down a little bit. If you were doing architecture, you wouldn't rotate the camera down like this. It's always good to keep a level plane for the vast majority of interior shots. But this isn't an interior shot, it's a funky animation, so we'll go a bit crazy. Is that going to have the floor in shot? Yeah, perfect. Cool, okay. So we've got our totem in place, our spinning top in place, and our table. We'll add in a few more items. I'm going to be quite quick here because I am making this run on longer than it needs to be. Might have a little go in the editing room afterwards to trim it down some, because as you may have noticed by now, I do like to talk, which is unfortunate for you. Okay, we'll add in a Barcelona chair and stool, whatever that is. I think I know what it is. Yeah, that's the one. Good. Okay, this is 2 items this comes as, which you can't separate. This is one of the reasons that you might want to use append in certain circumstances, because this is, even though this is 2 completely separate groups, it's been linked in and therefore is considered just one item. But I don't think it's going to be a big issue. We'll just put that about there. How does that look? Ah, perfect. So you're going to see it through the table along with the floor. It gives that real impression that there's more going on than just this little corner, which is what we want. Again, move that to layer 2, and we'll link in. Not that. Oh, come on, Bill. There we go. We want ourselves that funky lamp, which I really love, actually. I want one for my house. We'll position that over here. Now what we want to do is do our best to keep it out of shot. I don't want to see the lamp. I don't mind the pole coming up from the wall there. In fact, I like it. You may or may not have noticed in my video I added in like a plug socket and just a few extra things to give the impression that it's a real room. And this is going to do the same. So we've got the pole going up. You're not going to see the lamp, but you will see it in the reflection of the table, which again just gives the impression of more going on than what's in your camera. Right, is there anything else we need? Something for the table would be nice. I modelled a little cup with my logo on there. But for this, we'll pick something a bit easier. Oh, messy books and a glass of water. Fantastic. Could probably go for the rug as well, but let's not go too crazy. All books. Boom. Oh, I must have clicked append. Pro move, Bill. Pro move. There we go. So there's our books linked in. God, there's some big books, aren't they? Oh well. Just have them hanging off the table a little bit. Move them up. Yeah, about there. That should be fine. Check it from the camera angle. Ooh, it's a bit close. Okay, if we get that, we'll just go for interesting book because it's the only one this poor fictional person has to read by the looks of it. There we go. So now we have our book in place. Make sure it's in line with the glass of the table, which I think it is. Yeah, looks about right. That just gives us a bit more impression that this is an actual room. Now I don't think this pack includes any blinds. I modelled some wooden blinds to go over the windows, so you don't have to worry about any exterior sort of objects. So we'll see if there's anything along those lines. You're probably thinking this is the sort of thing you should have a look at before pressing record. I perhaps agree with you, but hey, I didn't do it, so I guess that's that. I'm going to grab this cushion as well. Grab that up. Actually, it's quite comfy. Fancy a sit down now. There we go. Oof. Yeah, whatever, that'll do. Okay, so now at this point, we'll call that done. Obviously, spend more time than this on your own one. Don't rush it. Come up with some nice objects. I mean, you could even just pick an entirely different scene. I just wanted to do more than just the basic spinning top on a table with no background. I wanted there to be a full scene to work with, which is why I chose to do it this way. But go nuts with it. Anyway, the next step is going to be lighting with the HDR and whatnot, which we'll get onto now. Okay, time to get some lighting in our scene. Now, initially I did plan quite a complex HDR setup where the diffuse areas of the scene were using a low resolution HDR and the reflective ones were using a high resolution, and it ultimately turned out to be a total waste of time because I then put blinds in the windows. The camera shot barely showed the windows anyway, and it made no difference. So we're going to keep this nice and simple. I'm going to go to the node layout, I'll switch this to camera by pressing number pad 0, and then go to rendered. And then we'll get a little view of what our scene looks like at the moment. Awful, of course, because we have no lighting other than the grey background. So go into the world nodes, which you get by clicking down there, and we're going to add in literally just the one low resolution environment map, if I can find it. There it is. Okay, so this is basically a massively reduced and blurred version of the 3K HDR there. Using a low resolution one will cut down on noise, it will increase, it will decrease, there you go Bill, render times, and I've heard it can cut down on memory. I don't see how that works if you're also using a high resolution one for reflections. Certainly if you're just using this, it will definitely cut down on memory. I'm not convinced if you're using both that it would. I don't know. But for now, yeah, that'll do. So we're going to use the normal technique of a multiply node to control the brightness. One you've probably seen many times before. I was trying to think of a good way to explain why we use a multiply node, and I think I just about got it, because it confused me at first. If you have, let's say 0 represents total black, yeah, no light whatsoever, and 1 represents maximum light for that image anyway. If you then multiply it by, let's say, a value of 5, now those really bright values that are near 1, let's say for argument's sake 1 as the brightest area on the image, will then be 5. You're multiplying it by 5. The darkest areas, like 0.1, will all be multiplied by 5 as well, but that was only going to give you 0.5. So the darker areas have only been increased by 0.4, 0.5, whatever, whereas the brighter areas have been multiplied by 5 and increased by 5. So it basically keeps the dark parts of the HDR dark and strengthens the brighter areas to make them even brighter, which is what gives you the really nice shadows, which is why we use it. Okay, I'm going to turn it up to about 12. I'm going to turn on multiple importance sampling. Very important when you're using a HDR. Normally I'd up the map resolution. In fact, I'll do it anyway. Not as though I'm going to be rendering out the animation again. But for you, if you're not seeing a visual difference by increasing the map resolution, I wouldn't bother, because it does it can increase render times. Okay, one adjustment I do want to make is to the windows. So we're going to click on the window and then the glass material. If it wants to play ball, which apparently it doesn't. Oh right, okay. I'm being stupid. Okay, so this is our glass material, yeah? Which in an interior render does look really good, but because of the angle we're catching this window, all you're getting is the glossy reflection of the chair, and that's not what we want. So we're going to cheat by using a light path node, and I'm going to bring in a transparent shader, and then I'm going to go shader mix shader. And then we're going to say if it's a transmission ray, no, a reflection ray, no, it's a singular ray, that was it. No, it wasn't. Oh, come on. Yeah, that gives us the effect we're after. So basically, it's letting more light in via the window there, and brightening up that corner quite a bit, which is nice. So we'll leave that as is. And we're actually pretty close now. What we're going to do is change the wall here. First of all, we'll give it a texture, call it wall. Now, if you were doing a interior scene, you'd spend a lot of time on the walls. It's very important, in my opinion, to build up some color variation. But we're going to be blurring out with depth of field a little bit. You're not going to be able to make out any of the details, and it really doesn't affect the overall image. So we're going to literally leave it as a dull diffuse shader and just give it a slight orangey tint. I mean, like super slight, 0.05 maybe, and 0.95. That's our basic wall colour. I am going to add in a feature wall, something again picked up from Mr. Price at Blender Guru, and I don't think I've made a room in ages where there hasn't been a feature wall. It just really brings things out. So we'll assign that to this second material, and we'll call it feature wall. Excellent. If you didn't see what I did there, so I did rush for it. We're getting a little pushed for time here. I just highlighted the faces of that wall, added a new material, and then assigned those faces to the new material. So now when we adjust this new material, it will only affect that wall. It would help if I was in rendered mode, I would imagine. Bam! I mean, the difference is ridiculous, isn't it? Just changing the colour of a couple of parts of a wall, and bam, your whole image looks different. I'm probably not going to go for this rather feminine purpley pink colour. Or shall I? Yeah, that's everyone's dream room. Well, clicking on that has made me think, actually, never go too saturated on these, well, on anything really, but certainly on a big surface like that, you do not want too much saturation. I'm going to go for a very officey looking blue feature wall. Nice and smart. There we go. Okay, so render settings. We are at 1280 by 720. I'm going to set the sample count to 500. Clamping values, by default these are off. I have found that a direct clamp of 4 with an indirect of 1 is a nice starting place. You might need to adjust it as you go. Again, there's a whole tutorial worth of information you'd need to fully understand how they work and when to use them. One thing you do want to click on though, because it's an animation, is that little symbol there. Now what that does is randomize the seed value that generates the light rays that renders your scene for each frame. If you don't do this, if there is any noise, it will stand out 50 times more, because the noise will stay in the same place. So as the camera moves, you kind of see the noise as this ghostly image moving across the screen, which looks horrible. Whereas if you click this, it randomizes that noise per frame, and you barely notice it sometimes. If you've got one of those scenes where there's just a little bit of noise, put it in animation, you can't see it at all. It's a great button, use it. Okay, light paths. I have a setup here called medium global, which works pretty well for me. So 16 max bounces, 1 diffuse, 8 glossy. We're going to go with something basically like that. If you're doing interior scenes for added realism, you'd want to at least double those figures. When I say an interior scene, I mean, you know, a living room scene where you can see the whole living room and whatnot. You'd want to increase those values. What I would stay away from is full global. There is very few circumstances you would ever need that many bounces, and you're going to slow down your render. Simple as that. So we'll stick with these settings. Leave off caustics because that will slow things down ridiculously as well. Turn on filter glossy to a value of 1. That cuts down noises on reflective surfaces. Really important if you're in a scene like this where we've got this massive reflective area, which was just going to be a firefly noise party if we don't do something about it, which hopefully that will do now. Now, tile sizes, I use an add-on called Auto Tile Size. It's brilliant. If you let's say I go to CPU rendering for a moment, it has changed it to be tile sizes of 32. If I go back to GPU rendering, it's changed them to 256, and it does it all on its own, so I rarely even have to worry about that. You won't have that by default, so just if you're using GPU rendering, go for tile sizes of about 256. If it's GPU, if you're rendering on CPU, sorry, set them to about 32. And that is that for render settings. So I'm going to give that a render now, because the next part we're going to cover is compositing. We're actually going to do animation last, because I like to make sure a scene is looking just about right before I worry too much about animating. So I'll render this off and then continue the recording. Okay, so we're back. That is the render. In fact, no, it's not. Basically, I ran the render, and that's how it came out, with quite a bit of noise, especially in this corner of the room there. So as a quick little test, leaving the render settings exactly the same, I dumped in the portals because I wanted to see the difference, and the result was quite noticeable. This is with portals, and that's without. Pretty much speaks for itself. Render times are barely different here. Slot 2 with portals was 6 minutes and 8 seconds, and slot 1, the original one, was 5 minutes and 52. And all I did to change that was drop in these 4 area lamps, which you can see are covering the areas where the light will be coming into the scene, and inside the light properties I've just clicked portal. Oh, that's it. For a more detailed explanation, visit BlenderGuru.com. There is a tutorial on there regarding portals, or there's, I'm sure if you Google you'll find several others, but they're definitely worth using. Okay, so we're going to move over to compositing, as I said, leaving animation till last. So we're going to keep it quite basic. One adjustment I did make that I forgot to record, I'll quickly show you now because it is important, is under the with the spinning top selected, you need to do this before you render, I might add. Click on the material panel there and change the pass index to 1, and then under render layers and under passes, select material index, so it will do a material index pass while it's rendering, and that in the compositor will give us this index MA node blobby nodule thing, which we're going to need to apply some specific compositing to our spinning top, which we'll do first because it's fun. Honest, I promise. Okay, so we need to add in why has it jumped out of my head? ID mask. Right, sorry about that. Okay, so we put the index value into the masks there, and if I attach the viewer to the mask by pressing, well, you can just obviously connect it, but to be quick, if you do hold Control Shift and then left click, you can reconnect the viewer to wherever you want. Now you'll notice that on pass index 0 it's everything except the totem, spinning top, and if you change up to 1 it's the opposite, which allows us to use that as a mask to focus our compositing where we want it to focus. So we want this one for now, and what we're going to do is take a RGB curves node, and we'll also need a color mix, I suppose. I'm just going to set that to black and put that in there. I'm feeding the image into the bottom of the mix node, and then use the ID mask as the factor, and that should, boom, give us just our totem to work with. And then we'll feed that into the RGB curves, because what we want to do is isolate just the bright parts. Oop, hello. Just the bright parts, so we can apply a few effects to the light shining off it. Because if you can imagine, it's going to be spinning around, catching light at all different angles, which means you can get some really nice playful effects out of it. Blur, lens flares, whatever you want to do. I personally went quite subtle with it, but if depending on the type of scene that you're planning on doing, you could go pretty crazy. So next up is we're going to add in a blur node, which I always set it to fast Gaussian for a start, but I always set it to relative, because then if you decide to change your screen resolution, you don't have to muck around with all your different nodes. I'm going to set that to about 20. What am I talking about? 2, which gives us a nice bit of glow there. And then if you add in a color ramp, oh my god, boom, there we go. And then you can adjust these values a little bit to get just the sort of effect that we want. About that would be good, I think. Turn it down to 1. Ooh, hello. That's pretty. Yeah, okay. Now, because a color ramp removes all color, because you can tell there, when a node input is grey, it means you will lose all your color values. It just turns it to grayscale. It has a yellow output because you can change the color of the actual nodule bits there. So it puts its own colour in, but that's certainly not what we want. Hello, undo, thank you. So, much like we did with the mask, we now need to bring in our image. There's probably a better way of doing this. But, hey. And there we go, we've got our glow, but using the colours we would expect from... Is that working? It is, good. Good. Okay, so we've got a bit of colour there. Now what we're going to do is add that into the image from there, and adjust the values, obviously, because that would look a bit hideous. Okay, colour mix. We'll change it to an add factor. Drop that in there. Drop that in there, and then again, boom. And you can see we're getting a little bit of glow. Way too much. Which you can control by lowering the grey value there, or you can change the add value there. It does pretty much the same thing. I tend to leave that up and reduce that, but it's really dealer's choice, I guess. In fact, I might do a bit of both. Both works quite well. Yeah, anyway, so we've got a little bit of glow there. Now we also want to, no, we don't want to add that in, do we want to add that in? Bam! Okay, so we've got our scene there with the glow starting to come through from the spinning top. We will also then add in, I might try and do it at this point so we can add it all in together and then just have the one addition for After Effects. A filter glare, which we will set to ghosts, just so I can show you what that does. What's the best bit to grab? It's going to be that chap there. So if I grab that, in fact, you know what, I'm going to use the raw data from there, because the glare node has a threshold factor of its own. So if I turn the threshold down to 0, you can see it's ghosting the entire shape, which we do not want. So let's just up the threshold until we get the sort of thing we're after. Yeah, that looks nice. Turn down iterations, because you really don't want too much of that. Also turn down the color modulation and whack the mix up to 1, because we don't want it to include the input, just the output that the node is creating. Perfect. Okay, so now with our two separate effects, we'll blend them together and then add them into our main part of the scene. So we're adding a color mix node, connect them up together. Now we'll do it as add rather than mix, because we don't want to lose any of the effect. We just want to put them together. Actually, it's nice at factor 1 really. Now all the facts, because we've already decided on that value and it's going into the top, the add node is only controlling how much of this is applied. Currently it's all of it, but you could put in 2, which would be 2 times the amount, which we'll have, because that puts it in a nice brightness when compared to the glow. Now we feed that into the add node, connect it to the viewer, and we have a bit of an effect there. If I turn it up to max, you can see the whole thing, but you'd never want that. In a still, you tend to go higher with compositing than you do on an animation, because it really stands out when these things start to move. You want it to be quite a subtle effect, unless you're not going for that, obviously. So I'm going to take mine to about a 0.25. Not that noticeable. I'm going to change the glow just a little bit more. I might go 3 and then try and sharpen it up a little bit in the middle. Maybe 2. 2.5. It's arguing with me. Let's see how that looks. Not bad. Okay. Now we're going to apply some more general glow to the rest of the scene. In case you're wondering, the reason we've separated it is because this is the object that's going to be the focus. So I feel it's important to have a completely separate composite for it, because it's the bit that everyone's going to be looking at. You're going to end up applying more compositing to it than you might the rest of the scene, and this allows you to separate it. To keep things neat and tidy, however, we are going to grab all of these nodes and then set the ID mask, because I might need that again. Nah, we'll keep that in there too. Press Ctrl G, and then that becomes a node group, which you can then tab out of. Now we currently have the image going into 2 nodes, which we don't want. It's tabbed to go in and out of these node groups, by the way, and then you can change the little nodule bits here. We'll send that up to there instead of that one, which means that is no longer used, so we can get rid of it, and we'll swap them around so it lines up with the inputs outside of this group. So we tab back, and now we have the image and index going into the node group, and the node group is coming up there, and it's nice and neat and tidy. Okay, so opposite of what we just did then, really, we're going to get another ID mask, leave it on 0 this time, put that in there, so we've just got that area, which is exactly what we want. Mix that back in. If it feels like playing ball. Boom, ba-doom. That's an add we want, isn't it? Did I do an add on the other one? I need to check that because it probably should be an add. Yeah, but that's going to cause some problems. We'll have a look in a minute. Okay, so that's adding in. You see, perfect. So that's added in the scene but left out the totem. So any compositing we apply to this bit will not apply to our totem. Will affect the reflections, but that's not an issue. So we'll do the same thing again. We'll use a blur node. In fact, no, we'll take a little shortcut because it's going to be nice and easy. And it's the background after all. So we'll add in a glare node. Where's it gone? We'll leave it on fog glow this time. Now, if we take I'll put the mix back up to 1, so none of the original images in there. At factor 1, it's just the windows that are getting the effect, which is pretty much what we're going to want. But we'll take it down just a little more until we get more of the image getting this glow. So that's basically getting the whole lot, isn't it? Which is not really what we want. Yeah, so 0.3. That's not too bad. Okay, now we need to put these bits together. So we'll do the same thing again. We'll grab these and put them in the node group. We don't need to muck around with the node this time, except maybe swap the order of those over. So we have our two node groups, which I will quickly name. This one is spinning top effects, and just copy this throughout. Bam. And then this one can be background effects. Fantastic. And now we just need to combine. Yeah, I really shouldn't have put that in the actual image, should I? Because that should, yeah. Wake it up, Bill, wake it up. So we need to mix in the actual image from here. So a color mix and an add. Grab our image, which should look like absolutely nothing because I've not set it up right. Oh, this isn't going well, guys. Oh, it's because the viewer node's not there, is it? And then add the glare in there. There we go. So at 0, there's no bloom around these windows at all. At 1, there's way too much. So at about a 0.3, maybe 0.4, we start to get our effect. Now what you want to do at this stage is, it's actually the image from there we want feeding into that. That will bring our two glows together, you would hope. Why you know worky. Okay, so it works there. Figured it out. Awesome. Okay, very little to do now. We're just going to add in a color balance node. No, in fact, I'm going to keep a hue and saturation as well. Add in a color balance node. Connect those chaps together. And then put the viewer in there. Awesome. So we're going to give it a little bit of a, I don't know the correct term, I think it's a, is it sepia, or is that when it's more blue in the mid? I can't remember. Either way, when you're mucking with the color balance node, I tend to leave the first one alone completely unless I really need a big shift in color. It's the midtones and the highlights I tend to muck with, just so you can see what they can do. I'll set that back to about white. So if I could set the midtones to a heavy green, give it a sec to composite. Ooh, a bit too heavy. You see, that gives the midtones a real green there, but the higher tones, like this, in this case the whites around the window, hasn't been affected that much. And if I do the high tones, you start to see they get a bit of a tint of colour there. Now, as a general rule, not always, but certainly as a general rule, do it in opposites. So if the midtones go in a bit yellow, jump over to the other side of the colour room at the colour wheel, and you can see a bit of a blue there. So on the highlights, it would be blue. they just go well together. I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I have no idea what it is, but I'll demonstrate here. Kind of a matrixy sort of look going on there. Blue and yellow, or blue midtones and then yellow outtones gives you that sort of look, which is I think what I went for in the original. So why not do it again, eh? Also, don't go over the top with these values. Yeah, not too bad. Okay, I'm going to turn the saturation down to about a 0.7. I always think rendered images just have that little bit too much colour in them. The second you take it out, you instantly start to get a more realistic looking result. See how that looks over saturated compared to that? It just has a slightly more realistic look. Now in my final one I also added lens distortion and stuff like that. Feel free to play around with it. I'm going to keep it quite simple though. I will add in a vignette because I like them. Ah, matte, there we go. So if we get a ellipse mask, drop that into it. In fact, we don't even need anything into it, do we? No, boom. Okay, so let's just play with this to get it about right. Just 1 and 1, that'd be handy. Yeah, I didn't think so. So 1 and 0.6, 0.5, no, 0.55. Ooh, we're close. 0.56. Hey. So now we have our mask. We need to blur that now. Now, I'm sure you've heard this many times before, but the thinking behind a vignette is to draw the viewer into the image, give their eyes a focal point, as it were. So let's do that now. Blur, fast Gaussian, relative again, maybe a 25. Yeah, that should work quite nicely. And then we're going to multiply that over the original image. Also connect up the composite. Yeah, we don't want too much of that coming through because it will look over the top. Not too bad. Okay, now I'm going to stop there with the compositing because, like I say, we are going to be animating this. There might be some adjustments to do at that point. Probably not. But that's a good basic setup for your compositing. You obviously want to spend more time on this. Typically, on a project, I would spend anywhere between 2 and 3 hours mucking around in these compositing nodes. Over compositing stuff will ruin your scene. Not doing it at all will make it look boring and dull, and in most cases not particularly realistic. It's an overlooked and very important part of the process. So we'll call that done. Make sure you do hook up the composite node, because when you come to render, it will automatically apply these effects to the render without you having to do anything, and the frames it will spit out will be good to go and composited. Now that leaves us with animation, which we'll start in just a moment. Right, the final stage, animation. If you've jumped here from the modeling stage, obviously your scene will look somewhat different. You'll just have a totem. So hopefully you've created your own scene, or at least put it in a flat plane to work with. But the lessons that you'll learn are going to be the same regardless. We're going to do 2 things with the camera. First of all, we're going to grab it and move it in a little bit, just so our totem is the focal point of what we're looking at. I'm going to angle it a bit further. I did notice during the compositing that you couldn't see the floor through the table, and that was basically the Fresnel value, because we're looking at the table from such an extreme angle. All you're getting is reflection, and you're not seeing through it at all. Two ways to fix that is angle the camera down a bit more. We might be able to see the table here. Might be able to actually make out the floor now. Yeah, you see just that slight difference in angle. Now through the table we can see the legs of the chairs, the wood from the floor, a hell of a lot better than where it was previously, which was about that sort of angle, where all you see is reflection. Anyway, go back to where you were. Stop defying me, Blender. There we go. Okay. So let's take our table and move it to layer 3. So now we only have a spinning top and a table to work with. And we'll then jump to the animation panel, which is here. Press the numpad period key, focusing on the object that we want to look at. Now if you ever come across this where you're working with small objects and you try and look in on them and oh no, it's disappeared. The way to fix that, press N to bring up this toolbar and then lower this clipping distance. In this case we'll choose about 1 centimeter. Now when we zoom in, we don't have that issue. Do be careful with this though, you can get some weird artifacts if you lower the clipping distance too much. If you do, just raise it up a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to hit I, and I'm going to mark the rotation keyframe. So now we've got these little numbers here, and the only one we want to look at is Z for now, because the first thing we're going to do is build up the spin action. Then we'll get to moving it around the scene more. So with our Z thing selected there, let's jump across to frame 6. Because we're going to leave 5 frames between each rotation. So in this case we need frame 6 because it starts on frame 1. Okay, let's mark in another keyframe for rotation. And now what we need to do is press B and select, or just right mouse button it, whatever. Grab this rotation point, and we're going to press G and then Y to move this up its Y axis, until you'll need to keep scrolling the mouse until you get to 360 or thereabouts. If you hold down Control, it will snap, so you can get an exact 360. Bam. Okay, so now we have our first spin. At this point, press A twice to select both the points, V, and then press Vector. This is because by default any animation is smoothed, so it will ease into from one keyframe to the next, which we don't want because this is a looping animation. It's going to be a constant speed, so we want to take away that effect, and the way to do that is V and then Vector. Okay, so now this dope sheet, which is a weird name in my opinion, we have these 2 keyframes. Now to create a loop, we're going to go back 1 frame. Okay, and then mark another rotational point. You can't really see what it's doing because there's no texture, but take my word for it. In fact, if we turn to material view, yeah, we can now see what it's doing. So it's making a full 360-degree rotation. But if we were to loop that now, you'd have 2 frames where it's in the same place. We don't want that. So we'll mark in another rotational point here, like so, and then we can get rid of those ones there, and we're also going to get rid of the X and Y ones because we're not concentrating on that at the moment. There we go, so we've just got our Z axis rotations, and now just jump 1 frame across, press Ctrl C to copy, Ctrl V to paste, and now you'll see it's rotated twice. So what we'll do is just keep whacking that in until we get up to our target, which in this case, I did a 10-second animation, so let's do that again. 300 frames at 30 frames a second is 10 seconds. Obviously you can adjust. Now, by default Blender uses 24 frames a second. I just find that looks a little juddery. 30 frames seems to work a lot better. But obviously the more frames you use, the more rendering you're going to have to do for each second of animation. So do bear that in mind. Okay, so we need to fill this rotation up to copy over to the length of our scene. I'm talking rubbish now. Now there is a much better way to do this using, I forget the term. Basically within the NLA editor you can set up a loop and get it to kind of do what we're doing here automatically, but let's just try and keep it simple and do it this way, because we're almost there and it's not exactly overly challenging. Almost there now. Bam. Ooh, did I get that one right? Hey, there we go. So now when we play our animation, I'm just going to double check that I've pressed A twice there to select all of these points, and I'm pressing V and then vector. Boom. And we have a spin going on. Doesn't that look fantastic? Or something. Okay, let's get out of that view because that bright white gives me a headache. Now what we're going to do is create the movement around the table. Now this one's more feeling it as we go, and we're going to leave in. We're not going to do the vector adjustment that we did because we want it to smooth this part of the animation. So we'll as we create these new keyframes, we'll be mostly leaving them as is. Okay, now you might be tempted to do it from top view because then you don't have to worry about keeping the spinning top level. And I've just realised I've forgotten something really important, and I hope it's not going to ruin what we've just done. I don't think it will, so let's fix it now. The rotational point, or the pivot point I should say, is currently at the bottom, but that's not how a spinning top spins. Would it be the centre of gravity? I don't know. I don't know what the term would be, but we need it to basically be in the middle of this rim is where we need our pivot point to be, because that's the way the spinning top moves. So if you select this, in fact we'll do it by the ridges. Select the two ridges there, Shift S, and then cursor to selected. Tab out of edit mode, press Control Alt Shift and C, and then origin to 3D cursor. Now when I rotate, it rotates around that point rather than the bottom, which is the sort of motion that we want. Let me just make sure I've not screwed this up by doing that afterwards. Let's have a look. No, all great. Groovy. So back to frame 1. Hit I, mark the location this time. So we're going to start there. Now you'll be tempted to animate this from the top, because then you don't have to worry about the Z-axis, you're just moving it around the table, and there's nothing wrong with that, especially since you've got a camera preview up here, so you can see where you're moving it. That's a perfectly valid way of doing it. However, the way I like to do it is get a nice big view so you can see exactly what's going on, and then press G and Shift Z to lock out the Z-axis so we can only move along X and Y, and then you can choose where you want it to go. So best advice I can give here is go on YouTube, have a look at some videos of these things in action. Make sure you pick a real one rather than one that's already been done in CG, so you can see the way they move. So at about frame 60 or so, let's say, I'm going to move it to about there. Just realised I've not got my screen keys on. Stupid thing. There we go. And then we'll mark in the location again. I and then location. And then we'll jump to about 150 and move it a little bit down there. Yeah, okay. Mark the location. One at about the 230 mark. Up here a little bit. Each time I'm looking out the Z rotation, remember? Z axis, there we go. And then a final one at the end of the animation, about over here. mark location. Okay, so now if we play that back, I'll switch to textured mode so we can see what we're doing. Woo, off we go. That is starting to move around. Got a little bit extreme there. Yeah, that middle keyframe's nasty. It's kind of ruining it. So let's fix that now. Was that the one that was ruining it? Let's have a look. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, far too sharp a move. So on that frame there, I'm going to grab it a bit more over that way, mark the location, see how that looks. Oh, horrible. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so it comes in from that direction, that looks fine, it rolls up a bit that way, and then it zooms over there way too much. Okay, so we'll fix that one by moving it back over there. Did I mark that? Right. Try that again. Yeah, close enough. Okay, you might want to spend a little bit more time on it than I just did. Just a heads up. One thing I did do was on the very first location point. So if I take off the Z rotation, just leaving the X, Y, and Z location ones up, box select them all, and then hit vector just on these first ones, that will mean that it looks like the spinning top was already spinning when the animation starts. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we got that. Now all that's left to do, we're very nearly done now, is to make it look just a little bit unstable, because they don't rotate perfectly, especially as they start to slow down. They start to wobble all over the place, and this is where our pivot point comes into play that we fixed a moment ago. So we'll leave the, I'm going to mark the rotation completely again, because we do want the starting points to have the X and Y in there, and then at about, let's say about 90. How about 90? We're going to add in just a tiny bit of rotation in that direction. No, we're not. At 90, we're going to mark the rotation, but we're going to leave it where it is. So from that keyframe to that keyframe, it's nice and steady. Then a little bit along, we'll rotate, tiny amount, marking the rotation. And now, just realised I forgot to put my phone on silent. Noob error there, Bill. Good job. There we go. Okay. Hit play, and you'll see when it gets to that keyframe. You can't see it that clearly, can you? Let's try that again. When you get to that keyframe, oh, you see that? Now it's got a bit of wobble going on. So what we'll do is we'll correct that, and so it doesn't look like it's, I don't know what I'm trying to use there. Yeah, just basically we're creating variations in this tilt, which will give us the effect that we're after. So let's rotate, get that back to being roughly there, perfect. Mark rotation, leave it like that for a while, mark rotation again, and then towards the end of the animation, we're going to increase that instability as though it's just about to fall over. So about, I don't know, there. Yeah, that should be good. And mark the rotation in. Good. Right, back to frame one. Let's go to our default view. And then, bam. See how it plays. Ooh. Yeah, you get the idea. Obviously, like every single stage of this, the more time you spend on it, the better it's going to look. But I think that's enough to get the gist of it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. It's my first one, and it's a little rough around the edges, I think, but I'm sure we'll get there in the end. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have fun with it. See you next time.